Now, on the last video, it was the claret or sepia dun nymph that I tied. I got asked quite a few questions, but the main questions I got asked were, because I mentioned in the video that I tie them with the thread. If you don't like tying with the wire, you can tie with the thread. So could you tie one with the thread? And the other question I got asked, could I tie at least a smaller size 16, size 18? So while I'm still tying these nymphs, I was showing you, so it's very similar to the last fly, other than that it's much smaller and the colour's going to be different. But I still use the copper wire to weight the fly and ribbit. So this is how I do it. So we've got a size 18 hook, a standard shank wet fly hook. It could be, this is a medium wire, you can use a heavy wire, it's up to yourself. Now, as I say, I'm still using the extra small wire, copper wire. Now, I start it much the same. I start it just about head length or so away from the eye. Now, adding weight to the fly, I'm just going to come down, say about, it's not halfway, it's just short of halfway, come back up. So this adds the thorax, this adds the weight, and helps to get the shape of the fly, or the nymph. So I start to come back down, and then I come onto the shank, so it's starting to go flat, and then I hold the hook, and I just bend and break away the main wire, and leave the waist as my rib, as you can see there. They're coming down those 3-4 turns at the back of onto the shank. Basically allows it, when you're tying materials, to taper up onto the actual thorax. Now I'm going to use just a normal thread. This is just a uni 8/0 olive dun, because I'm going to be tying basically a small olive. This size works really well, even at this time of year I can still catch on these when it's quite early in the season. So anyway, we start at the eye. First thing we're going to do, is just run the wax through. And we start just where we started with the copper wire. Now what I'm doing here is I'm keeping the waist piece of thread tight so that I can control the turns and cover up the copper wire. Once I come onto the shank, then I can remove the waist. So then what we do is we head down to basically in line with the barb. Now what I'm going to be using here, these are the smaller, this is a bleached and dyed feather, pheasant tail. This is a bought one, this came from Veniards. So, but for the smaller flies, usually on a pheasant tail you'll get, unless you get the centre one, you'll get fibre length, good on one side, real long, and short on the other side. So in the short on the other side, and the smaller flies, I use them up. Now, as you can see, I'm going to bring these out. Now sometimes if you look here, 90 degrees from the stem, the tips naturally line up, but I don't know if you can see it there, there's one broken, which is not too bad. And there's about 7 fibres, including the broken one, so that's enough to tie the fly. So basically bring them together. When you're looking for a tail length, much around about the body length or so. Just catch this on the top. A couple of turns nice and tight. So a nice wee tail. You don't want it too long, the tail, because they break off if they're too long. So we start to come up onto the turns, the last 4 turns of the copper wire at the back there, because that's part of the body. And then what we do is we basically tie the flies the same we did with the last fly, the last video. Just come up with the pheasant tail onto the thorax cover, or the thorax, sorry, and this is going to be the thorax cover. So I'm just going to a couple of turns to hold it, and that's enough. And then what I'm using here is, this is just squirrel dub, and it's dyed, this is dyed olive. It's got a wee bit of finesse, it was SLF finesse, which is blended through it. This one's from Wopsy. So we just slide it up, and we nice and lightly work it up through. You don't need a lot of fibre, you don't want to bulk it up too much, especially this size. I mean, just encourage the pheasant tail to lay on the top of the shank. As we wind up, it'll do that. We wind up to a head length away from the the eye. Just check it, see what it looks like. Another wee turn just here to thicken up a wee bit. When we're happy with the thorax, take away the excess, just lift the pheasant tail. Any fibres going forward, you can draw them back at this point and use the thread to hold them. And then what I like to do is just to make sure I don't catch these fibres, I draw them towards the eye, bring the rib up, so we do a turn at the back. That's 1, 2, this next turn will basically catch the pheasant tail at the back of the thorax, or the beginning of the thorax. And then we just wind through that with a turn onto the head area with a turn with the copper wire, and stroking back any fibre, and then catch this in. Just take your time. Just bend and break away your wire, but keep the thread tight. At this point we can check to see what it's like, and it looks okay. So we come over with the pheasant tail again, catch it with a pinch and loop on top, 2, 3, just see where we are. Now, I don't know if you can see it there, but if you feel you're too close to the eye, you can go back, like what I'm going to do here is just go back, touch a wax on my thread. What's wrong here is the thread's too far down, so make sure your thread is right up to where you want to catch in the pheasant tail. So bring it back over, catch it there. I've got the wax to give us the grip. So 2 or 3 turns, trim away. Now I like to bring the thread, stretch it towards the eye, and then build the thread from the eye up into these cut ends. And then I'm going to whip finish. In the whip finish, I'll tidy the head area, which I'm going to do just by winding the thread like I would wind it if I was tidying or making the head. Make sure it's tight. I can trim away my thread. There we go. Nice and light. Nice wee dry, nymph. I would leave it the way it is, to be honest with you. It's rough and ready. It's just, this is the type of fly that I like in the rough water. I like to fish it off a dry even. Just piggyback it to the back of a dry fly. Just cast into where the fish are, where I expect the fish to be laying or lying. Just going to bring out 1 or 2 of these fibres. These ones at the back, you can use your tweezers to. There we go. These are just fibres that's laying on top. See how it looks. That's it. Oh, it's fine at that. And then obviously to finish off, I like to make sure there's varnish in the head, so I like to come in from the eye, the hook, using it. Even if I fill it up, I'm quite happy to do that. And then using a piece of wire here, clean the eye out. You could wipe the front of the eye with your finger. There you go, there's a small olive pattern. Tied, and just using the thread, I'd obviously tie it a lot smaller. You can, the tail, once you start to fish it, the tail will flare out slightly. That's why I like the pheasant tail. It doesn't last so long as some, you could use hackle fibre instead, but I've caught that many fish on these patterns. I'm quite happy to keep using this and just replace it. So, you see the tail, you can tap it down. And there we go. And that's the size, I say 18. You can go smaller if you wish. Depends on the style of hook, whatever you're tying. But these are good wee patterns. I mean, I think I showed you these in the last video, but these are the size, I'll show you a size 12 just to get an idea. So it's the same pattern, size 12, size 18. Same materials, just made smaller, simple as that. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the video and answer. I hope that answered the questions, or some of the questions anyway. So thank you for watching.